Do you hear that? The pure panic of a cyber attack. The complete chaos of hybrid cloud silos. The endless alerts of component failure and power loss. Can you hear it? Neither can we.
Hi, everyone. Good day to all of you. How is everyone feeling? Good? All right, so I just want to make sure that you're all with me today. So do drop at the chat box below your favorite emoji, just so I know that it's working, so that later you can drop your questions. Hi, I see everyone saying hi and all the emojis. I see hearts. I see laughing emojis. All right, I'm so happy to know that you're all happy. And by the way, my name is Ella, and I am your host for today's session. Elevate your cyber resiliency posture. Protect, detect, recover. And we're really excited to have you with us. Over the next hour, we're going to talk about something that's top of the mind for a lot of organizations right now: how to better protect your data, spot threats early, and bounce back fast if something goes wrong. We have an amazing lineup of experts who I'll be sharing practical tips, insights, and real life examples that you can actually take back to your teams. We know your time is valuable, so we've packed the session with useful takeaways. This session is brought to you in partnership with Elevate Space and Hitachi Vantara. If you'd like to learn more about their solutions, products, and services, feel free to visit hitachivantara.com. You'll also see handouts, by the way, that will pop out on your screens later. So feel free to download them anytime during the session. And don't forget to use the chat box, right? And send your questions. We'll have a Q&A later, by the way, and we would really love to hear from all of you. And we will be launching a few live polls. So keep an eye out and join that. So without further ado, I'll be walking you through our agenda for today. So right now we're having the welcoming remarks and introduction, and then right after we'll be having the panel discussion, and then we'll have the Q&A, and then I'll be going back here on stage for the closing remarks. So let's look at the speakers for today. To kick off our session, I'm super thrilled to introduce our moderator, Suraj Kotipali, APAC business leader, data platforms and solutions at Hitachi Vantara. With over 25 years of rich, versatile experience, Suraj leads a team of solution experts in APAC region for all data platforms and solutions portfolio, with a focus on helping customers modernize their data centers application and build strong foundation for innovation. Suraj is passionate about technologies enabling mission critical applications, AI adoption, high performance analytics, and obsessed with customer and partner success. Joining him are our esteemed panelists. We have Daniel Tan. He is the head solution engineering at Asia Commvault. Daniel Tan leads a team of talented sales engineers across the region of ASEAN and Northeast Asia and China. He is responsible for the effective delivery of Commvault's industry leading cyber resilience offerings to customers and partners. And next, we have Chris Millington, the Global Solutions Lead, Data and Cyber Resiliency at Hitachi Vantara. Chris Millington, a seasoned veteran with 35 years in the industry, has worked in various roles within the IT sector. His experience as a channel theater lead, specialist, SE, technical expert, and global solutions lead has enabled him to liaise between field operations, product management, and engineering teams. So without further ado, Suraj, take the floor.
Thank you so much, Ella. Just a quick check if my audio is pretty good. Can you hear me very well? DT and Chris, can I just have you unmute yourself as well so I can just kick off the webinar? Okay. First of all, good morning, good afternoon. I mean, everyone who has joined this call. I'm really thrilled to have a very large audience from all across Asia Pacific countries. I heard a very large audience running into a couple of hundreds, uh, all joining Singapore, Philippines, Australia, a lot of ASEAN countries, New Zealand. Wherever you're joining us, we are very, very, very glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. I have my very close friend and a partner from Comvault, Daniel Tan, in this call, and we also have Chris Millington. By the way, Daniel leads the solution engineering team in Asia from Comvault. We work very, very closely with them. And we have Chris Millington joining me in this, who is our global solution leader for cyber resiliency and data protection technologies. And he's joining us from Europe. And it's a pretty early morning for you, Chris. I know it's like probably 5:36 in the morning, but thanks for taking time to join us.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Suraj.
Thank you. Okay, no further ado. So we'll just move on to the topic. We have a lot of questions, a lot of discussion to go through. Ransomware attacks and other complex cyber threats are rising, and today cyber resiliency is on top of mind for every single CIO, CISOs, and IT professionals. Right? Organizations must prioritize cyber resiliency to safeguard their mission critical applications and data. Most importantly, the mission critical data. Right? So in this webinar, we explore how some of those strategies and ideas, and also some solutions and use cases to really help you and empower your organizations to protect the data. But it's a very, very important step. Protect your data, detect any ransomware and suspicious activity early, and in the event of an unfortunate situation where you have a data loss or a cyber attack, how do you recover quickly? So remember, protect, detect, and recover. Now, cyber resilience is a very big topic. It is very vast. So we are not going into discussions about intrusion detection systems or laptop protection, edge sites. We're not going into those areas in this webinar. This webinar predominantly talks about and spend time over on how do you protect the mission critical data and applications. And from that perspective, how do we ensure the organization can run those minimum viable applications in the event of an attack or threat? So that's what we're going to do. Let me start my first question to Chris. Chris, when I talk to a lot of IT leaders and professionals, many of them claim that having robust identity management, intrusion detection systems, and having encryption on their network and storage systems is good enough for them to be secure and immune to ransomware and other cyber attacks. What's your perspective on this? Can any organization truly be immune to cyber threats?
Hi, Suraj. Hi, everybody. Yeah, this is a great topic to start on. What we find or what we hear with a lot of our customers is that they have a proactive approach to security. And what we're talking about here in that statement is very much the security element. It's a preventative approach to how you access the infrastructure. And we understand very clearly that this is an ongoing concern. It is a 24/7 requirement within inside a business strategy. However, we see a very different approach when we start looking at the data first strategy of protection, which takes us away from that security element more into that resilience conversation that we're hearing so much about when it comes to cyber. What we are talking about here is very much the zero trust principles approach from a security element, and being able to take that approach into our data protection strategy so we can be more cyber resilient. So what that really means to us is that we want to control not just how access is controlled inside the infrastructure, but we want to control how we can access the data directly. And more importantly, where the direct access to the data is happening. So we see a big change from having your own data on your laptop, for instance, to having it more secure within inside the company environment that can only be accessed and indeed changed or even deleted under a multi-factor authentication approach. And what I mean by multi-factor in this case is you don't have a single capability to delete or change information without a second person's authorization. So this very much changes tactically what you would do from a protection perspective to be more in line with the resilience. So adopting zero trust principles from a security element, we see that as a standard. What I'm saying here is the great thing to do with zero trust principles is now take that standard and move that into the way that you manage data. And this therefore gives you a very, very high level of regulatory compliance.
Yeah, I mean, just a follow up to Daniel on this one. Daniel, you deal with a lot of customers, and you talk to a lot of IT leaders, and this question comes again from a lot of customers and say, hey, I have a lot of all this protection in place. I have identity management in place, and I think I'm secure from any attacks, or I'm immune from attacks. What's your quick view on this? Maybe a less than a minute response on this, please.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that question, right, Suresh? I think it's a great question there, right? I'll just from a protection perspective, right? Typically when it comes to the areas of backup and recovery, there are three things that normally we are looking at, right? So the first one is operational recovery, and then the second one is what we call the disaster recovery, and the last one, which is what we are mainly here for, is called the concept around cyber recovery, and it's linked to the zero trust that Chris just mentioned earlier, right? So I'll try to be made as layman as possible because I know that we have a mix of audience here, right, on the webinar. So the operational recovery, just think of it like human errors, right? So you have a new admin joining, like mistakenly delete a few files, right? So recovery of that one file or two files or a couple of virtual machines, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Disaster recovery then, you're then looking at, like disaster, right? As the name indicated, right? So it's a flood, so it's a power grid outages and things like that, right? That you have something that is orchestrated from one data center to the other data center, right? So in this disaster recovery, what our customers are typically looking at are like RPO and RTO, right? You can then simulate sub-minute RPO. You can then simulate the time that you need for the workload to come on board. But I think the last concept of cyber recovery is where I think the awareness will definitely need to be beefed up here, right? Because in the cyber recovery is when you do not know when the attackers are in. First of all, you do not know how extensive the damage are, and you do not even know, right, how quick your data that sits in the backups or productions are clean or not, right? So there are a lot of unknowns here. Then all of a sudden the measurements that we are looking at is not just the purely the RPO and RTO, right? We are looking at things like MTTR, and MTTD. So MTTD, in short, is the mean time to detect, and MTTR is the mean time to recover, right? By that, what we mean is that, for example, if there is an anomaly that happens, so using that zero trust that Chris just mentioned, how quickly can we detect something that is going on, that is abnormal? That is one, right? The second part is that MTTR, right? So once we detected something abnormal, how can we then recover in a very fast speed, go back to the minimum viable that, Suraj, you mentioned earlier, with all the critical applications and data, and start continuing business, right, around your minimum viable data. So that's a concept, around cyber recovery. I think, we've got to spend more time later on as well, but, I just want to kind of put it out there, right?
Sure. I mean, we will cover this in depth. So what I'm hearing from both of you is, despite having security protocols in place and identity management systems and intrusion detection systems, no organization can be immune, right? The ransomware attacks are getting very, very sophisticated. I mean, the threat actors are very, very smart. These are young chops with, really, really smart. They can penetrate, and there are a lot of entry points for any organization to come into the organization, right? And they can start emulating your admin privileges. They can emulate a lot of your systems and then start attacking your systems as well. I think no organization can say that I'm immune to any of these attacks. They are definitely going to happen. The question here is how operational you're ready with that. So your operational recovery is typically talk about if any incidental loss happens, how do you recover from it? If any disaster recovery, typically any act of God, then obviously you have systems. I think today operational recovery, disaster recovery, a lot of organizations understand that very well, right? They're mostly prepared for that environment. But in the event of a cyber attack, cyber recovery becomes very, very, very tough because there is an actor already sitting in the environment, constantly monitoring your operations and attacking your systems, right? There, how do you recover becomes more complex, as traditional operational recovery will not help in the event of an attack. And we'll cover about cyber recovery strategies in a short while. I think this is what we are hearing from the customers. One another important factor comes is on the regulation. Now, when it comes to IT leaders specifically meeting the regulatory guidelines and obligations, particularly in the area of cyber recovery, it's pretty challenging because what are you seeing, Daniel, in the market? Like when it comes to, hey, you know what, you go to a bank and bank says, I'm regulated by my trading board, or I'm regulated by my Reserve Bank of so and so company, our country. They have a very strict guidelines when it comes to cyber recovery. So what's your view on very focused, compliant industries when it comes to regulation and cyber recovery?
Thank you, Suraj. Another great question, right? Typically, this is the good news is, none of us want the bad guys to win, right? So the regulators, are especially stepping up, right? So in all the countries that I have visited, right? So just to quote a few, like, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, each of them have come up with a more stringent regulations, especially for the national critical infrastructures. That is good news, right? So for example, in the lights of, STDB for Hong Kong, RMIT for Malaysia, right? And then also the upcoming one in Singapore, and then we have, IRAP in Australia, right? So they all lead to a few very important concepts around cyber recovery where we just discussed, right? And also the zero trust that Chris mentioned. Because if you look at the traditional, how, we're looking at the protections of the data centers and the backup is, you have productions, as your live copy, and then you have another copy perhaps on the DR side, right? And we all just touch on DR is not CR, disaster recovery is not cyber recovery. So during the time of attack, what the regulators are also finding is that, usually the victims lost both their data centers, right? Productions and DR. Then the questions become, how can I tap into that third copy of life-saving, immutable, indelible data? Because during that time, that data is the data that you can use. You can scan to ensure that it's clean. Then after that, you want to kind of recover that third copy of immutable data back into what we call the IRE, right? Isolated recovery environment, right? And this is a cybersecurity term, right? Yeah. So I think these are the areas that I think the regulations are stepping up, right? Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that kind of complex environment. So what you're saying is regulators are, if I just summarize that, regulators are really putting pressure on organizations. Say, hey, you know what? You might have a lot of good copies and good copies of your data and everything is there, but in the event of an attack, you cannot simply touch the environment because it's infected, it's corrupted. You can't go and operate from there, which means then organizations have to run it from somewhere, some kind of a war room or some kind of a recovery room and run operation. Yeah. This comes with a lot of cost. This comes with a lot of complexity of running the operations. And also regulators says, you know what, I don't care how do you do it, but I want your operations to be back in a couple of hours and run from there. Let's see, if I'm running a core banking, it has to be back again. Chris, a quick comment on that from you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Suraj. I was sat there waiting to have a comment here. I spend a lot of time with regulations, and one of the things that the regulators are really, really asking everybody to do is be more predictable. We want to understand that you have a process in place that is regularly assessed and rated so that when the incident occurs, not only is your data protected, safe and ready to recover, but the processes involved with that MTTR and MTTD are absolutely tested, and you are assured that the way that you approach this requirement of minimum viable company, or whatever we want to call it, is a tested result of how to recover. So it's not about when it happens or if it happens. It becomes, how do we get back to where we need to be to have the ability to go back to the regulators and say, we believe our process is optimized to the best of its capabilities based on how regularly we assess this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that creates the pressure on the IT leaders to ensure that they have these processes in place, the technologies in place, but at the same time, they also have cost pressures as well, right? So how smartly I can bring these systems in place as well. I think we spent a little bit of time on challenges and some of the complexities around cyber. I think everybody understands it's very complex when it comes to an attack or recoveries. Let's talk about some strategies, and let me just bring up a quick slide before I start as a context, right? there's a small glitch here. Can you hear me well?
Yep.
Okay.
Suresh.
Yeah,
We
sorry.
we can hear you, but I can't see a slide.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it up very.
Okay,
So when I just talk
there
about
we go.
the strategies, right? The NIST framework talks about these 4 core areas. I try to simplify that into the 3 parts here, right? When it comes to cyber resiliency, the 3 important steps is a protection, detection, and recovery, right? When I say protection, there are a couple of capabilities or strategies we can look at. One is, how do I recover very, very quickly from my snapshots? Snapshots are the first line of defense, and they're very quick to take. And also the recoveries are much, much faster as well. So how do we ensure snapshots are safe and immutable? And then also we can talk about backup strategy, which is also the second line of defense and the most important line of defense. Probably the last line of defense is backups. And how do we ensure we have some very fast backups and recoveries, and also they are very much immutable. And Daniel, you just spoke about the air-gapped environments where in the event of an attack, actually the auditors and the forensics will not allow you to touch the data center, which means you should have some isolated air-gapped environment where the data is kept safe, and you recover your operations from that particular air gap. And we'll touch upon that very shortly as well. So protection is a very critical step. Then obviously detection is also very critical. And then we'll come to the recovery. So before we jump into the detection, I would want to hear some stories around what do you think about the protection strategies are, and what are the different ideas we can look at that. So first question to you, Chris. We just spoke about how important snapshots are when it comes to a critical first line of defense against data loss or cyber attacks. So what are the key solution capabilities, Hitachi Vantara is bringing? Because Hitachi Vantara is a data storage company. It runs mission critical applications and data for many, many organizations. So how exactly snapshots become a critical first line of defense for organizations?
Yeah, very good question, Suraj. So I want to answer this in a very simplistic way at the very beginning of this statement. What we know about snapshot technology is we can increase the frequency of how often we can protect. So this is key. If we look at a traditional approach to protection, we usually have a scheduled approach that happens usually when business is quiet or out of hours. So that scheduled backup approach is now changed with the introduction of Snapshot, because we can do it more frequently. We can do this during the day. And from a Hitachi perspective, this is something that we focus on heavily. So having the ability to do more frequent snapshot means we have better points in time for recovery. But that's not enough, because although we're taking frequent snapshots, we still need those snapshots to be protected. So having what we call our thin image advanced capabilities, this allows us to be space efficient, but also introduce immutability on the snapshots. So therefore now that snapshot becomes unchangeable. And this becomes really useful, because when we're looking at points in time, what we know is if we adopt a snapshot first approach, we can introduce scanning. We can introduce this into the data protection strategy. So working with Commvault, we're now able to say, we're going to take these frequent snapshots. We're going to have the ability to know whether they're good. We're going to make sure that they are immutable. And we are going to say, we're going to hand these over fully automated and integrated into the strategy, so that now Commvault orchestrates the requirements for these. And that's not just about the protection side of it. That could be moving those into environments for testing. It could be moving those into a secondary location for the ability to have everything in a place of security with role-based control that allows us to say that the frequency that we're doing things now has become more predictable. So we're not saying snapshots changing and telling everybody to be snapshot only. What we're saying is being able to do more frequent copies of information is very important. Being efficient at doing these is also business critical. So our introduction of our snapshot technology with Commvault is actually a winning solution for the ability to recover fast, although it's just the orchestration method that we use firstly.
Understand. So basically what you're saying here is the snapshots that we take on the storage platforms, we tightly integrate with Commvault, where you're initiating the snapshot from the Commvault as an IntelliSnap and say, hey, I need a snapshot of the storage system, integrate that with application. In the event of a data loss or an attack, you have the ability to roll it back to the previous snapshot, right? I mean, the previous last known good copy where you can bring the database or application back into. So that's a quick way of taking a snapshot and also bringing it back whenever you want. So this becomes your first line of defense, and it's very interesting. Obviously, the snapshots are locked. Nobody can change them. They're already immutable. So even in the event of an attack, nobody cannot just delete the snapshots or change the retention period. Fantastic. So they're tightly integrated into the Commvault solution as well. Then comes my second question about, so yes, snapshots are first line of defense and protection. Did you want to talk about the backup strategies? I mean, what exactly how important backups are for the organization as a second line of defense or the last line of defense? And what kind of innovation that you're bringing into the backup technologies? And how do you integrate that with the Hitachi platforms as well?
Absolutely, right. So thanks, Suraj, right. Just building on to what Chris has mentioned, right, with regards to the productions and like hardware layers, right, which we always believe that software has been operating for more than 29 years, right, really insisting that we had a software defined layers. So tying those security mechanisms of what you see on the hardware and software is the key to zero trust that we mentioned earlier, right? So Chris touched on this hardware, so now let's go a little bit into the software layer, right? So for Commvault, I think we always emphasize that before, during, after, right? Let's classify that. So before an attack, during an attack, and after an attack, that you need to have a more holistic view around the protections. So before the attack, there are a couple of things that we can do here, right? So first and foremost, it is to ensure that you have that ransomware protection turned on. Go without saying, but believe it or not, still there are people that are taking it for granted out there, right? So this is the first call out, because with the basic, right, even with the basic ransomware protection turned on, you are already eliminating a lot of these threats already, right? For example, any anomalies as compared to the baseline of the backups will be flagged because something is wrong, right? Something is actually being changed, or something is being changed drastically, right? So that's the first step. And then also when we read into the applications that we are about to back up, we also do that comparison as well, right? So if let's say that it is very, very far off from the baseline, either from the hash comparison or either from the, the anomalies detections there using some AI calculations, then we should be able to flag it out. So that's usually the first early warning that I keep like to talk about, because the early warning will allow the organization to actually react quicker and hopefully reduces the MTTD, right? The mean time to detect. So there's always the first step, right? Make sure that you do all the mechanism before that. And of course, you can enhance the protections by, putting on the honeypot files, right? And things like that. So that's before. During is where, where you kind of like compare the metadata and you can do the meme type checks, right? To ensure that the files that you are backing up is indeed the files that it says it is. For example, right? If a PDF file, for some reason, the meme type has been modified or the metadata has been modified and it's still reacting like a PDF file, that is something abnormal. It could be a secret code that the hackers are trying to embed inside a PDF file, and that will also be picked up by Commvault, right, during the backup. And the post-backup, right, is exactly what you just showed there, right? Suraj, is something called threat scan, right? Mm-hmm. Threat scan is where you want to ensure that even the files have landed in the backup, you need to have a strategy basis to ensure that it is still clean with the signature to date. So the problem is that normally what we do is that when we do the backup, right, and then you back up and forget, right, and then that becomes your most critical copy and also your last line of defense. You do not want your last line of defense to be infected by the day zero, which has not been picked up in the productions yet, right? So what you want to do is that you have a robust scanning strategy to also scan your backups to ensure that your latest copy that is marked clean is indeed clean using today's signature and the latest signatures. That's how you can ensure that you always have that life-saving copy, last line of defense, whenever you need that backup data, right? So this is something that is really critical for us to think about. So hopefully I covered that before, during, and after, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so clearly, I think the backups are a very, very critical, important strategy from any recoveries, and ensuring the backup copies are clean. ensuring that you're actually monitoring during the backup and after the backup is like it's like scanning any other file. You have to keep scanning your backup files to ensure there's no anomalies in that as well. Especially the malwares can inflict at the time of backups as well. Before I jump into another key topics, I would like to bring up a poll question here. Hazel, can you just bring up the poll question here, please, for the audience? Let's give another 30 seconds, maybe for people to answer. All right, we're getting the first indicators here. So a lot of audience are saying that an AI-based ransomware detection is one of the top priority that they would like to see in the organization. To be honest, you can have a lot of ransomware protection technologies in the environment, but you got to anticipate that at some point in time there will be an attack, and there could be an attack, right? And that's why you have to have some kind of AI-based ransomware detection capabilities in place. You also need to ensure your snapshots and backups are immutable, because in the event of you find a ransomware has already penetrated in the environment, or an attack is about to unfold, or even actually an attack has already happened, the only way to recover is from the snapshots and backups which are there in your environment, right? And we talk about the isolated recovery environments, which is also another key topic as well, because it's getting more and more complex, right? Now, coming to that AI-based ransomware detection. So, Chris, you just spoke about how important is it to take snapshots of the storage, integrate into the application with Commvault, because that becomes your first line of defense and also first quick recovery back in the event you want to roll back the system, right? Now, how do we ensure that we have some kind of detection? What if those snapshots are being attacked? What if those snapshots are actually compromised? What kind of ransomware detection capabilities are inbuilt into the core storage and also into the snapshots? Can you just elaborate on that?
I think you bring up a really good point here, Suraj, and I want the audience to understand very clearly here, from a detection perspective, if we want to have the best detection capabilities, we need to get as close to the data real time as we possibly can. So I often use this term, which I call scan first strategy. So what we're able to do, for instance, when we get closer to the production data by using that point in time approach that Snapshot gives us, we know obviously that that's been made immutable now. But what's really important now is can we actually scan that snapshot? Can we look for anomalies in that snapshot before we actually build that snapshot into our longer term protection strategy? So what we've created is something we call CyberSense, and CyberSense is very much based around being able to take that thin advanced snapshot that is immutable and detect anomalies right down to the byte level here. So we're bypassing just the metadata, we're bypassing the file extension or the application extension and going right down to the byte level detection. And on top of this, what we also have is we have an ability from an AI learning perspective to be predictable in the manners that the data is changing. So things like encryption or large volume changes of deletion are immediately detected. But also we have the ability to look inside an application for small changes that may well go under that watermark that you see. Now, the question was asked very early on, can we be 100% able to recover information? The answer today is no. But what we can be is 99.99% that we have a good copy that we can roll back to, whether that's through the CyberSense technology and the snapshot capabilities of what we have here. And bear this in mind, the anomaly detection capabilities of this solution can look at tens of millions of different type of attack vectors that we have here. But what it also allows us to do is it allows us to do two important things. Number one, we can run the scan. When the scan is finished, it will report back and say, this copy is good. And we will wrap that back up and we will keep that for a period of time that's acceptable to the business. We can then, of course, pass that over to part of the longer term strategy, which builds it into the data protection side of it. So we're being predictable that when we take this point in time, it's good. And that's very important. But the AI question that came up, and it's on everybody's mind here, the learning capabilities that this product has or this solution has means that it's always at the optimum capable of understanding the data itself. And that's the predictability that we're looking for here. That ability to know that if it detects something, what is it that we do next? Well, the first thing that the software does when it detects something, it highlights that. And it fits into all your scene tools, into your security operations center to give that warning. What it will also then do is it will locate where that detection was, and it will point you to a position where you can go and examine exactly what caused that. The last thing that it does, it tells you your last known good copy. So therefore, you can go back to that last known copy. You can take the snapshot and take it into an isolated environment, as we talked about, and we'll go into more detail about later. It gives you the flexibility and the predictability to know how to react. And that's the key here. 99.99 is very useful, but having a plan of how to react is the most important part. So CyberSense delivers that.
Awesome. I think that level of detection at the source level, I would say the detection at the source level, ability to alert immediately to the administrator and say, look, there is actually some kind of suspicious activity, suspicious malwares have already come to the storage platforms because you're running mission critical applications there, right? That's very, very critical. And also it's continuously learning and updating with all kinds of, threats and, what is happening in the industry as well, right? So it's just ensuring that you have protection against day zero attacks as well. Now, while we have protection in the storage, we have protection in the backup copies, which DT, you spoke about that as well, which is, hey, when you're taking backup itself, because they're the important line of defense, how do we ensure the backup copies are not compromised? How do we scan them on a regular basis? And that's also coming with an AI-based technologies to ensure that you have a constant anomalies that you can detect in the backups as well. So you got protection in the source, you got protection in the backups as well. Then comes the detection in the environment. So let's say if a ransomware attack is about to unfold and they've already been sitting in the environment for a couple of weeks and months and present everywhere, passing the malwares in the environment, how do we detect any kind of ransomware or suspicious activity in the environment? Can you just share some thoughts on that?
Really, really good point, right? I think one of the key points, if I were to summarize what you just mentioned, right, is the hackers' dwelling time is never 1 or 2 days, right? They are in the environment for some time already, and also they try to penetrate at different levels and different layers of your infrastructures. So even before they touch your actual backup data, we have to do something to have that early warnings. So early warnings is a key concept towards the zero trust, right? So how do we actually build that early warning mechanism before the hackers touches the backup data? There are ways to do that, right? So one of the way is, something called the ThreatWise, right? So ThreatWise, in short, is a cyber deception technology. So what you are essentially doing is that if you're trying to protect the environment, whether it is the backup server, whether it is the control panel of the other systems that sits alongside with the backup system, let's say the storage control plane, right, and other software layers that you're trying to protect. What ThreatWise allows you to do is to mimic that control plane, any control plane, right? So it doesn't have to be Convoy, it doesn't have to be Hitachi Vantara, it can be other layers of the infrastructures that are sitting together inside the let's say Convoy and Hitachi's kind of infrastructure clusters, right? You want to mimic them. Why? Because if, let's say, the attackers are starting to have activities, right, they will start by, pinging the less suspicious server. They're not going to go big bang into your major infrastructure's control plane. They will go with the smaller control plane, right? Such as if, let's say, you have other, unsuspicious server that's sitting around, right? So that is going to be their first target. So you want to be able to capture that early warning if somebody touching, some of those unassuming servers. So what the cyber deception allows you to do is essentially having those sensors planted among your actual infrastructures. So if the hackers land on some of these sensors, right, you already get an early warning that, hey, something is wrong, right? I think the bad guys are targeting my house now, right? So they're trying to get into my house. So that is where you can actually correlate and respond together with the cybersecurity tools that you have, right? One example would be CyberSense as well, right? That, I think Chris just mentioned, to really react to the potential threats. And that is, I would say, is one of the very key things, right? Towards, I know that audience here love about AI-based ransomware detection. So that is one way that you want to complement this AI-based kind of ransomware detection to ensure that you have that earliest warning, right, for you to react. Yeah.
Understand. So basically, we understand from a protection perspective, snapshots, backups are very, very critical so that they becomes your line of defenses against any kind of attacks or recovery, right? Second one is detection. So we spoke about source level detection. We spoke about detection in the backup copies and also some kind of cyber decoys or honeypots that you put in the environment for hackers to come in, try to attack those systems, and you get early warning signs so that you can start taking preventive action. So detection, I think a lot of organizations invest in protection technologies, but kind of neglect the detection capabilities, right? So you got to really invest on the detection capabilities because you don't want an attack to happen. You want to kind of prevent the attack to happen or get early signs of the attack, all right? Now, let's switch the gear. Let's understand that we already have protection in place, we have detection in place, but guys, nobody is immune, right? You got to expect the unexpected. There will be an attack, and in the case of when an attack happens, how good you are from a recovery perspective. So before I speak about the recovery strategies and the recovery solutions, I want to bring up the second poll question as well. Hazel, can you just bring up the second poll as well? And I'll just quickly move to the next segment, which is probably the most important, which is everybody thinking, okay, what are the recovery capabilities that we have? Okay, how does the poll look like? Occasionally, rarely, they have recovery strategies in place. Some people say we do quarterly or more recovery as well. Okay. All right. So Didi and Chris, so my next important topic is on the recovery. My first question is to Chris. All right. So Chris, what exactly is an air gap environment? So we keep hearing this. Hey, you got your production environment and your DR environment. So everybody knows about production DC and DR, disaster recovery. They're very good when it comes to operational recovery and disaster recovery. Okay, but when it comes to a cyber attack or a cyber recovery, typically what happens is when the attack happens, you most probably get restrictions to the data center because the whole data center is infected. You cannot touch it. So you got to bring this data to an air gap environment. So what exactly is that air gap environment? Is it something that organizations have to invest in advance? And what kind of data will come to this air gap environment, right? Particularly from a cyber recovery perspective. So can you just unveil this to the audience and say, hey, what exactly is the air gap strategy and what kind of data you're going to keep in the air gap environment?
It's a great question, Suraj. And I think it's an area that a lot of people get confused about. Air gapping is the terminology that's used, but it's actually a real strategy, this. And what we're talking about is we're talking about isolation. We're talking about the ability to limit complete access from production, to move it away from production if necessary. So it may well not even be on premise. It may well not even be in the same location. So the isolation capabilities is very much see it as a cage. And it's a cage where you can put something in there and only the people that have the key to the cage can go inside there. So what we tend to see with a real isolation strategy is that this is probably owned by the security team in conjunction with the infrastructure management team of what we actually put in there. And this is where that term you'll probably see many times or hear many times, the minimum viable company approaches is let's get our business critical data and have the ability to isolate it first. But what we also see, and we partner a lot here with Commvault, is we take that isolation approach and we can use that isolated environment as a very, very strong minimum viable company digital twin approach. And what I mean by digital twin is a true reflection of the production environment, but in its thin format, which means that we've got business critical capabilities that can be stood up. But more importantly, what we'll see as a test platform. and that test platform becomes a cleansing area. So I'm reading this poll here, and I'm seeing that people are regularly testing their data sets. So it's nice to see that the verification of a copy of information is now being tested, but are we truly testing that to the level of being able to stand it up? So isolation environments give us the ability to do a true real life recovery test inside that protected environment. It also allows us to do a 360 reversal thought on this. And what I mean by that is we can actually use that isolation environment to take that infected data set and put it in there for forensic analysis. So we can have the ability to not only stand up and continue working from a clean environment or isolated environment, but we can also take the data that's been infected and isolate it into that environment so that it can be looked at forensically. So an isolated recovery environment is absolutely a viable way of looking at it, but you're not getting the maximum use out of that investment unless you can use it for multiple use cases. So isolation, recovery, one use case. Testing, predictability, understanding the cleansing process, second use case. Forensic analysis for legal requirements, a third use case. And what's really important, everybody here, this is a fully automated capability that's being delivered by the solutions that you're looking into that meets regulatory compliance, but ultimately it gives you that predictability. And that's the key element of the strategy here. The technology side of it, as you can see on the screen, it's very, very cost effective to look at the way that this is done from a fin perspective. But the question you have to ask yourself here, there's always going to be a cost for technology, but what's the cost of not being able to be predictable in recovery? And when you look at that from a commercial viable company point of view, then you'll understand that having an isolated recovery environment is a key strategy within inside an organization.
Yeah. So just to, I don't want to go, I will have a follow-up question to TT about the IRE as well. So what we are actually seeing here is there is already, I have your production applications running here, the databases and all the stuff running here. You're keeping on the core storage platforms. In this case, we have the Hitachi VSP1, which is a database solution here, all the block storage solution where all your databases are running. You already have encryption in place. You have protection in place on the storage system. Then you're doing snapshots here, just in case if anything, application error, it could be data loss, it could be an attack, you can try to recover back into the previous snapshot. So that capability is inbuilt. And at the same time, you're also taking backups into some high performance backup appliances, and also some kind of an object storage for second copy. You already have your backup also in strategy as well. And you are regularly scanning the storage with the CyberSense solution and also scanning your backup copies. So pretty much this whole environment is a very secure and storage platforms with the backups in place. But we all understand that in the event of an attack, this whole data center will become inaccessible. So what we're recommending here, what Chris is saying is, if you have some kind of an isolated clean room or an air-gapped clean room, where you periodically bring some good copies of the data here into this environment in a it's very, very physically and logically separated, isolated network or environment where you keep your good copies and protect them in your clean room and continuously scanning data here as well. So the reason why you have to invest in a clean room is in the event of an attack, if this whole environment becomes inaccessible, even having good copies of your snapshots, backups in the same environment will not be useful, because the only way you can recover your data center, your critical data, is from the clean room, which was already isolated. So that's why the clean rooms are becoming very, very important for mission critical data. All right. Now, if I want to take this clean room and recover into an IRE, so Daniel, my question is, what exactly is an isolated recovery environment? Is it an exact replica of the data center? Is it something, a small footprint of the data center? What exactly is an IRE? And what kind of applications and data you're going to bring into the IRE in the event of an attack?
Yeah, thanks, Suraj. Right, one thing that I observe as well, right? I think Chris and yourself, right, Suraj, you did a fantastic job at the explanation around the testing processes of cyber recovery, which is why I see that the poll are still moving, right? There are more people that actually start to actually vote for rally, right? Because the actual cyber recovery, a proper cyber recovery, and also the incident response process is not easy to do, right? Let's start with that, because most of the businesses that we are still observing today are testing what we call disaster recovery. So that fundamentally are different. Hopefully through this session, that biggest takeaway for you is that the testing of the disaster recovery is already on the file, on the book, is required by the audit. But the testing of cyber recovery is the key here, right? Towards a minimum viable company that Chris just mentioned. So minimum viable company is an answer to your question earlier as well, Suraj, is that does everything go to isolated recovery environment? The answer is no, because then it is a very costly exercise that is you will hardly get the buy-in, right, from the CEO and the CFO, right? Because you are telling them that I'm going to spin up an entirely new data center, either the third one or the fourth one, to actually mimic my production data centers. That's just not cost feasible, right? Of course you can do that, right? But what we are actually encouraging our customer to do is a concept around minimum viable company, which means that the first step towards that minimum viable concept is to determine what are the workload, the applications that are truly minimum viable for your company to continue to operate. That's the first step, right? And not just the applications. You got to think about the minimum set of processes and the departments, the business processes, and everything else, right? So of course you're going to map out that minimum viable concept from a people, process, and technology point of view. Then only you move into, okay, from that important workload or applications, here are some of the workload that I really needed to be up and running in the isolated recovery environment while my productions and my DR are being remediated by either the authority or the SOC, the Security Operations Centers, or our internal forensic team, right? You need to have that RE in place because you want to run your minimum productions, let it continue to run, right? So that your business are not that much of it being impacted, right? So this concept, I think, is rather new. And in order to test this, I think Hitachi's and Convert are doing a great job there to make it very easy to consume, right? As you can see, everything is packed into here. And it's orchestrated. I like the word that, Chris used. It's really orchestrated for you to really have that testing and forensic in the clean room. And when you're confident that it is really clean, that's where you can be, go into your pivot into your minimum viable company concept, right? In the IRE, right? Isolated recovery environment. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is how you should look at IRE. Yeah.
Yeah, I think great point. So the IRE is basically a small set of servers and storage and platforms that you keep it ready only to run your mission critical applications there. Because obviously in the event of an attack, many of the applications and data is compromised on the data center and it's already infected with a lot of malwares. And most like if you're running a bank, for example, right? You have multiple applications impacted. The first call that you get from the CISO is disconnect the data center, both the front end and the back end, right? So because they want to isolate the data center completely for forensics and regulation. Even if you have a cyber insurance, the first thing the auditors will tell you is, no, you can't access the data center anymore because we are coming to investigate what is the impact of the ransomware attack in the data center. So in that situation, when the data center is inaccessible for days and weeks, the only way you can operate your mission critical application is from the IRE environment. This is a small set of servers and storage kept ready, where you bring the data from your clean room into the IRE and start running your operations for a couple of weeks. And we have seen the average days of a ransomware attack is almost 24 days. So this is an environment you're going to run. And once your data center is clean and back to operational, then you again replicate the data back from the IRE back into your production systems as well. So you have to bring the production back here, right? Now, this is becoming more and more a regulation requirement, especially for, let's say, if you are running a core banking or some credit card applications or trading and other stuff. I'm just giving an example of bank. It can apply to manufacturing, retail, all critical applications. What they're saying is, in the event of attack, you're going to recover from the IRE and start running from there. This is pretty much becoming a norm because how good you have your backups and all that in the production, that will help you from operational and disaster recovery. But in the event of a cyber recovery, we pretty much probably will have the data center is not at all accessible. So this clean rooms and IREs are becoming. Again, this can be on-prem. It could be a hosted environment. It could be in the cloud. There are a lot of ways to handle this air gap and IRE environments. That pretty much summarizes some of the recovery strategies and the recovery options. So we spoke about snapshots, we spoke about backups, we spoke about air gap environment and IRE. So today's webinar pretty much focused on mission critical applications and data. How do you protect them? What kind of detection capabilities you have, and what are the different recovery strategies that we can take, right? So let me just open up to the Q&A. Let's see what kind of questions. I know a lot of questions have been answered here in the chat window. But if we got 5 minutes here, if you have more questions, you can please get into them. And meanwhile, can we also bring up the third poll question if we have, and see if the answers will be. Oh, actually, already poll question is here as well. Okay. Any Q&A, please, from anyone? Can immutable snapshot and backup detect data that has been modified, encrypted by bad actor, and alert before the snapshot is taken? Yeah. You want to take that question, Chris? Maybe it's
Sorry, I was typing an answer to one of the questions that was there. Could you just repeat the question again, Suraj, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Say, can immutable snapshot or backup detect data that has been modified, encrypted by bad actor, and alert before the snapshot is taken?
Right, okay, so that's a good question. There's a slight bit of confusion here. Remember, when we take a snapshot, what we're doing is we're taking a point in time, or if you like to use a better term, a copy. So once we do that, we're able to then scan. There is no true production-based scanning capabilities right now because the overheads are too high. So we have to take the point in time. So to go to the point of taking the point in time of snapshot, we can then scan it instantly. And that scan will go down to the byte level and we can detect any anomalies.
Absolutely.
Does that answer the question?
Yep, absolutely. That's what they were looking for, like how quickly we can detect any anomaly during the insertion itself before the snapshot. Okay. So there's one interesting question it's a very long question from Rajiv. So it said the IRE diagram shows two distinct recovery paths, a low RPO block replication path to DR and a higher RPO backup path that feeds. Okay, the DC and DR, right? You have a very fast replication that's main. A DC DR is mainly for disaster recovery or a failback environment, right? So if anything goes down in DC, you can recover application from DR. So that's really on a very high fast, replication that's going on. But do remember, from the production environment, you're bringing critical copies of your data into the clean room first. You're not connecting your IRE to a data center ever. The IREs will never connect to the data center. Remember that in the diagram, right? So you are bringing the data from the data center to the clean room on a stipulated time. You're bringing the good copies. It is only a pull action. There is no push action from data center side. So you are very carefully opening certain ports, certain connections between the clean room to the DC, pull up the important data, and then you scan it. Only in the event of an attack, the IRE will be switched on, and then you bring the critical copy of your data from the clean room to the IRE and start running the operation. All right. So most of your critical applications will start running from the IRE in the event of an attack, while your data center is getting cleaned up and all that forensics is going on. Now, once your data center is back online, you have to bring whatever is the latest data, the last few weeks data from the IRE back into the production. Now, that cannot be very fast because the reason here is it's not a DCDR environment. So we understand there could be an RTO time to really bring the data. But there's no data loss, there's no recovery because you're still running your application from IRE. And when your data center becomes accessible, you will connect the IRE to the data center and then do the replication back to the to the DC environment. And then you again disconnect your IRE once your DC is up and running. So do not treat an IRE as an equivalent of a DR site. So DR DC is completely different. They run in full high-speed connection with a lot of replication going on between them. That's why any attack happens on DC, it's very, very likely possible the DR environment will be infected as well. Correct? So IREs as a complex environment, simple environment running only for mission critical, and you might not have same SLAs the way you have between DCDR and the IRE environment. So, but customers understand that. They say, look, I'm running this in the event of an attack, and even if it is running on a very low mode, performance is okay for me as long as I'm able to run my operations. Okay. Couple of more.
Just to add one thing there, Suraj, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead, Chris.
Remember, everybody, everything that we're saying here is really important. But remember, when we talk about compliance and regulation, the role and responsibility of these different environments changes within inside the business. This won't be necessarily controlled by the data protection team. It may well be controlled by the security team. So therefore, these isolated environments and clean rooms will have different roles and responsibilities. And it's very key, this, because if you think about vulnerabilities in a business, we're not just talking about the applications, the data, or even the attack vendors from outside. We're talking about traditional data protection management teams having super user access. And we can't have that anymore. The compliance and regulation don't allow this anymore. So we have to be able to hand over that responsibility for that particular element of recovery. So isolated recovery environments will 100% have at least a 50% ownership with inside the security team.
Yeah.
So this is quite key. And I mentioned the digital twin strategy. What I meant by digital twin, and if you're as old as I am, is what we used to call shadow IT in the old days.
Oh, we lost Chris a little bit there.
Oh,
Did you? Yeah, I think his screen has just froze. I think. Sorry, Chris, we just lost you for a minute there. But
Sorry.
yeah, no problem. I think we got the message there, Chris. We just slightly over the time. I might take another question here and close, or I'm going to hand it over back to our host, Ella. Do you want to probably take it back? And I think a lot of questions have been answered by my team here. I, Swami Thanga, as well as Sujit and Tim have answered a couple of questions in the chat window as well. Okay. And if there's some questions that we couldn't answer, we'll definitely respond back to you on the email. But it was a fantastic session. A lot of topics. It's a very broad topic that we have to cover. But I think it gave a good glimpse of the protection, detection, recovery strategies, and how do we handle these cyber attacks, and how to be more cyber resilient. Okay, Ella, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much to Suraj, Daniel, and Chris. Our panel discussion for the day. We extend our gratitude, of course, to all the attendees who attended today. And of course, this event is brought to you by Hitachi, Vantara, and Vault. We truly appreciate your participation in this really insightful discussion. And I hope that we all go home full of ideas and insights to share with our respective teams and organizations. Before we close, we want to remind you that the recording of today's video will be made available soon, so you will be receiving an email with a link shortly. And if you have any further questions or need additional information, feel free to reach out to the contact details shown on the screen. So all of the contact is there on the screen. Do reach out to us. And by the way, this is Ella, once again, your host for today. And once again, we hope that you really had a fruitful learning for today's discussion. And we would really want to welcome you back in our upcoming webinars. Should you need a turnkey project contractor, please contact us at info@elevatespace-events.com. Once again, that's info@elevatespace-events.com. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for coming. All right. So thank you for staying throughout the program. And this is the very, very end of our program. Like what I said earlier, you will get a chance to win an iPhone 16 and 100 US dollars grab or Amazon voucher. So we will be having one winner for the iPhone 16 and 5 lucky winners for the 100 USD grab or Amazon voucher. So all you have to do is scan the QR code below and answer our survey. I will be giving you 2 minutes starting now. All right. So I timed this for just 2 minutes. So you guys have to answer the survey within 2 minutes, and you will have a chance to win an iPhone 16 or grab vouchers. That's 100 USD grab or Amazon vouchers. Once again, our winners will consist of 5 winners for 100 USD grab or Amazon vouchers and 1 lucky winner for the iPhone 16. So you're left with 1 minute and 30 seconds left to answer the survey question. So I just want to see if you guys are done. So if you are done, do comment down below on the chat box. I want to see if you are done with our survey so that I know you have already participated. Okay, so we will be showing a wheel with all of your names in it. And then we will be asking you guys if your name was called, you have to say present or here so that we know that you are with us today. The mechanics are simple, just answer the survey. And also, if you are here, if you are of course, the lucky winner, you have to comment here. You have to comment present. Just make your presence known. All right. Last 40 seconds, you guys. Last 40 seconds. All right. I am super excited for this giveaway. So let's see who our lucky winners would be. Okay, so I see a lot of names already in our wheel of names. So let's see who the lucky winners for today will be. Last 20 seconds, you guys. Last 20 seconds. All right, we are about to close the survey. So, last 10 seconds. If you haven't yet, hurry up and submit that survey because we will be adding all of your names to our wheel in 3, 2, 1, and time is up. All right. Okay. So we are adding your names right now to our wheel, and I will be showing all of the names in just a few moments. So if you are the lucky winner of our iPhone 16 or one of the lucky winners of our 100 USD Grab or Amazon vouchers, make sure to make your presence known. If I do call out your name, say here, say present, or just let me know that you're with us today. Okay, mechanics are super, super simple. All right, that's it. That's all you have to do. And if you see someone that says here, do help me in identifying them. All right, you guys. So I want to see who here wants to win an iPhone 16. Okay, let's see your manifestation powers. Who wants to win? Me? Drop an emoji at the comment section below at our chat box. I'm really big on manifestations. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in winning the iPhone 16. All right. So our wheel is now ready. We are sharing our wheel of names. Okay. So there we go. All of our names are there. Brace yourself. Our first winner, by the way, again, the first 5 names that I will be calling will be winning 100 USD Grab or Amazon vouchers. So the first winner of our voucher is, let's see, who is our first winner? Sanjit Kumar. Chris. All right, from Chris. Are you here, Sanjit Kumar? Do let us know if you are here. Okay, let's just wait for Sanjit Kumar. Okay, I see a lot of congratulations already for Sanjit. Let's say congratulations. But again, you have to be here. Okay, so Sanjit is here. Next name. Our next name is. Our next name is. Who is our second lucky winner? Jasper Christian, Corpus Friction Materials Corporation. Wow, that was a mouthful. But Jasper, are you here? I see a lot of congratulations already. I see a hands up. Oh, okay, that's not Jasper. Let's see if Jasper is here. Say hi, hello, it's me, present. Let's wait. Okay, so Jasper is here. Our third winner is, let's see, our third winner of the voucher is OKY Alfasa Wiyaj from Micromine. Okay, so Alfasa, are you here? Alfasa, say hi, say hello. Are you here? So let us know if you are here. And okay, there we go. I see you. Congratulations on winning your 100 USD Grab voucher. On to our fourth winner, right? Fourth. Yes. Our fourth winner is, let's see. All right, let's see the name. Zulhusini Tempo. Are you here? Zulhusini. Congratulations to. All right, I see you present and here. Congratulations, our last winner of the 100 Grab or Amazon voucher. Last winner, guys. Brace yourself. The winner is Benjamin Sebastian from Taishan Insurance Brokers Philippines. Benjamin Sebastian, are you there? Okay, I see you loud and clear. I see the here. All right, so we are now moving to the last, very, very last raffle, the iPhone 16. So who here wants to win it? Let me see some hands. Let's see that power of manifestation. I see a lot of me there. Okay, let us now spin the wheel and let's see who our lucky winner of the iPhone 16 will be. All right, here we go. The lucky winner is Chan Cheng Hong from Aeon Credit Service. Are you here, Chan? Congratulations to you. Okay, let's wait. Okay, I see that I am here. Congratulations. Super congratulations to all of our winners and also to all of our attendees because we were all winners today because we have learned a lot from Hitachi Vantara. All right, so thank you so much. And of course, to Comvault. Guys, thank you for attending. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned a lot. Once again, my name is Ella Gomez and see you guys around. Bye.
Do you hear that? The pure panic of a cyber attack. The complete chaos of hybrid cloud silos. The endless alerts of component failure and power loss. Can you hear it? Neither can we.